Hey, everybody. I'm Travis Flans, one of the WordPress KC organizers. And tonight we have a great presentation with Andy O'Neill. Hopefully, you're using WooCommerce to sell your products, your subscriptions, your memberships, all that kind of good stuff. Andy is an integration and automation expert that can combine all of your marketing and business systems to operate smoothly, to save you time, to save you money. So I'm going to turn it over and just let Andy take it away from here. Oh, as my lights go out and it gets even darker. So welcome, Andy. Who are you?
Thank you.
What do you do? And I'm going to disappear until I'm needed.
All right. Thank you. So my name's Andy O'Neill. I'm a business owner. I own the company Weblytica LLC. I've been married for 16 years, got 4 beautiful kids. I am a recumbent trike rider and rail trail explorer. This is a picture of myself and my dad last year about this time, riding around Springfield, Missouri. I'm also a Google Maps Street View photographer. I do technology wherever I go. And so I actually take Google Street View photos of trails that I ride. This is about a year ago at the Razorback Greenway in Northwest Arkansas. So I've taken over 2,500 photos, and they've had over 600,000 views on Google Maps. And just something I do as I ride along to let people see what's going on. So a couple disclaimers for me today. When we get started here, I'm not a WooCommerce expert, and I'm not an e-commerce expert. I have been around e-commerce. I started my e-commerce experience back on something called Joomcart, which was a Joomla platform e-commerce tool. And that was over a decade ago that I had experience with that. And so if you have questions about how to fix WooCommerce or strategies for e-commerce, I'm not your guy. What I am is a process and workflow integration architect, and I understand cloud-based systems, including WooCommerce and Shopify and other platforms like that. But I'm not going to be building your WooCommerce store tonight by any means. So there's a couple things I want to talk about here. So there's a way to integrate and automate inside of WooCommerce, and I'm going to briefly touch on that, but then we're going to turn a little bit. So, for example, what do I mean by integrate inside of WooCommerce? Here is an example of a product called Automate Woo. It's $99 a month for a year of updates and support for a site. Quite honestly, I've never used it. I'm not promoting it. This is just an example of what's out there. And this is a tool that will automate your WooCommerce store and basically not anything else. And so this is an example of a plugin or something where you can automate within WooCommerce. But I'm going to talk about integrating and automating outside of WooCommerce. And so we're going to actually take the data out and do things outside of WooCommerce to automate our workflows. So that's what we're going to talk about. And the reason, so as I look at this, there's some drawbacks of integrating inside of WooCommerce. As we just saw, the cost compared to an automation platform, the cost of Automate Woo, that one product I just found with a Google search, is $99 a year. And again, that's automating WooCommerce only. You can't automate any other parts of your business with that. As compared to Automate Woo, there's a platform called Integromat, which we're going to talk about more later in this presentation. But Integromat, some of you might be able to get away with a free Integromat account. If you do a paid account at $9 a month, that's $108 a year for if you're going to be a heavier user. And you can use that to automate your entire business, not just WooCommerce. And so you can see the price difference is really the same. The other drawback, as I've seen it with integrating inside of WooCommerce, and this really comes from experience of trying to integrate and automate with WordPress plugins in general, because again, I'm not a WooCommerce guy, is kind of the limited scope and flexibility of plugins. So when you go get a plugin and you add it to WordPress to automate something, maybe send emails to MailChimp, you're really dependent on the imagination of the plugin developer. So that plugin's only going to do what that developer thought about when he built that plugin. When you use a platform outside of WordPress, outside of WooCommerce, like Integromat, you essentially get an unlimited scope and unlimited options of what you can do from a automation standpoint. The other thing is I found with these kind of plugins is they kind of have a black box mentality. So, if they don't work, you don't know why. And you have to submit a ticket to the developer and say, why isn't this working? And your reporting and troubleshooting is kind of limited. So real quickly, what are the benefits of workflow and process automation? Obviously, you're going to speed up your business by doing that. You're going to save time. You're going to create consistency for your customers, protect against user error, and it helps you stay informed with what's going on with your WooCommerce store. So as you think about automating your WooCommerce workflows, which ones should you automate? So basically, there's these 4 things you think about. What are the repetitive tasks that you do that don't require a human to do them? Those kind of go together. What are the things you do over and over and over again? And they're just mundane tasks that you have to just, you're copy and pasting, whatever. Those are things that you can replace with automation. Error-prone tasks. And then what are the tasks that don't scale? If you think right now what's going on in our world, Amazon's e-commerce sales are off the charts. People are staying at home. They're ordering stuff. I mean, the guys are running around like crazy delivering boxes from Amazon because Amazon had to scale when all of this craziness happened with the virus. Have you tried to order aloe vera gel from a website, any website, anywhere besides Amazon? You can't find it. Things happen. This thing happened in our world, this virus, this pandemic, and suddenly things are e-commerce stores are scaling, 10, 100 times what they used to do. Look at those tasks and say, what happens if overnight my sales go 10x or 100x? What are the tasks that don't scale? Maybe look at automating those tasks. All right, so I'm going to shift gears a little bit. We're going to kind of dive into Integromat. We'll talk about more about what that is in a little bit, but we're just kind of lay out an automation scenario here. And again, we're talking about WooCommerce. And so every automation has to start with a trigger. Something has to start that workflow. If you're dealing with WooCommerce, that is most likely an order. A new order comes in, somebody does a digital card swipe on your store, you get money, an order is generated, you get an email, somebody's paid you money and bought something, a digital something or a physical something. So that is what that trigger typically is. That trigger could also be a customer being created or a coupon being created, but we're going to assume that is a new sale for this purpose of this presentation. So that is our trigger. A sale has happened, boom, things need to be automated after that. So under this orange bar, we have the automated actions that can happen. And I'm just going to give you some kind of general examples of what these could be. These will have to be tailored to your situation. But for example, let's say you want to send yourself or you want to send a customer a message. So you could do that using Gmail or Office 365 mail. You could send yourself a message through a Slack channel. You could send yourself a message through using a Google Chrome browser notification, or send a text message using a platform like Twilio. But these are messages that you could send to yourself or a customer. For example, you could create an automation that when a customer orders for the very first time, you send them an extra email that's like this welcome email. Maybe there's a coupon code in there. Maybe there's a free gift, something that is like, hey, thanks for becoming a customer. You could also, on the flip side of that, have a returning email returning customer email that said, hey, welcome back. We're glad you ordered again, that kind of thing. Those could be automated, and those could be above and beyond the transactional emails someone could get from your WooCommerce store. So here's another example of a very common thing that I've done for people is saving their customer information and or order information into a secondary place, such as Google Sheets, HubSpot, the Knack, which is a database builder, Salesforce, Airtable. So when that order comes in, we say, hey, we want to save that somewhere else so we have a new, an extra place for that. Travis says he likes to make his smart lamp flash green when he receives a new payment. Yeah, that is a notification. I didn't put that in my notification list, but that's a great notification. Another thing you could do is create a task. Now, it kind of depends on your store. If you're shipping stuff, then you might want to say, hey, I'm going to put a Google task that says, ship the box of stuff to the person who just ordered it. You could do it on Todoist or Trello or Monday, any kind of reminder or project management type platform. You could add a reminder to that or to your Google Calendar if you want to keep track. So that way, when the orders came in, give yourself a day lead time or whatever, and you could check those off to ship those out. If you're selling digital products, maybe you want to follow up with your customer a couple days later and say, hey, did you get the digital product working? Did it open? Did it install? Whatever it is, and just follow up with them with that reminder. Another thing is you can add your customer to an email list. So this can be done, again, automatically. You're not opening MailChimp and adding them in there, and that could be automated with any of the email marketing platforms, Constant Contact, Aweber, ActiveCampaign. But add them to an email list. And in the case of MailChimp, maybe you want to tag them. You could actually tag them with the product that they just purchased. So now you have this segment based on products that have been purchased on your store. So that's an automated action that can happen. And then I know a lot of people will they'll add data to QuickBooks or their accounting package that they use when they do a sale. And so they're not sending an invoice, but what they're doing is an order comes in, they create the invoice, they mark it paid, they create the customer. And so all of that is in their QuickBooks or whatever their accounting package is at the end of the year, where they can do a profit and loss statement. And they can also, for tax purposes, they have it all together and it's right there in their accounting package. All right, so I'm going to show you an example. This is a real life scenario. It's don't be too overwhelmed by it. It is fairly complicated, but there's two branches here, as you can see. You see my mouse. There's a branch up here and a branch down here. They work similarly. We're just going to look at one of these. But what happens here? What happens here is the very first step here is we have a WooCommerce sale. And this is a client scenario. And what they're doing is they're selling training packages. And so the reason there's two branches is because when they sell the initial package, they're charging for a year. So they say we have a training package, an e-training package, and the client buys it for a year for a lump sum. And then after the year is over, to maintain access, they pay a monthly charge. So that's why we kind of have this wonky branch thing is to handle that the way that works. And incidentally, the way it's set up is when that comes to WooCommerce, whether it's the year or the monthly, the WooCommerce item ID is the same because it's set up with the free trial and a setup and that kind of thing. So I have to figure out, I have the product and then I have to look at the price to see if it's the first year or if it's the monthly. So this is how this works. And that's what these steps are here. This is kind of sorting out what it is. So what happens is the order comes in, I search for a customer in QuickBooks. We don't want to duplicate customers. QuickBooks won't let you duplicate it by email. But the first thing we do is we say, hey, is this customer in QuickBooks? And if they're not, right up here, we create that customer. And then it continues down here and we grab that customer we created. we create an invoice. And then the next step is HubSpot. So this is QuickBooks and HubSpot put together. HubSpot is what this client uses for their CRM for tracking sales and their customers. So we're going to look for a contact and update that contact or create it if it doesn't exist. We're going to create the company, which is this step right here. And then in HubSpot, what you do is you connect that contact with the company. And so they're tied together. And then you go through and you create in HubSpot a deal, which is basically a record that says, hey, we sold something and here's the status of us and this is how much it is. And then we go back to QuickBooks, we create a payment for that. We apply that payment to the invoice and we send an email that said, yay, this ran and everything's done. This automation, and we figured it out, talked to the client. If they were to sit down and go, oh, okay, ding, we got an order, we got an email. I'm going to sit down, I'm going to log into QuickBooks, I'm going to create this, I'm going to log into HubSpot, I'm going to cross-reference because these assets are cross-referenced to each other between HubSpot and QuickBooks. This is probably a 15 to 20, maybe 25-minute task to sit down and do one of these. Let's say 15 minutes to be conservative. With this automated, it literally runs in 12 seconds. As soon as that order comes in and the order is registered, it runs through here and creates all of this in 12 seconds. So that client has gone from spending 15 minutes on a task to nothing on a task. That because it's automated, it takes 12 seconds. That's the kind of power that's behind this kind of automation. And this just runs by itself. And they get an email. They look at their email. They're like, "Oh, good, it ran, great," And their bookkeeper keeps an eye on things and makes sure everything's going well. But it takes far less time than it used to when they did this process manually. So I'm going to talk about a little bit more about Integromat now. Integromat, I'm a registered partner with Integromat, and Integromat is an integration platform as a service. Basically, what that means is it has tools to let you connect apps like WooCommerce, QuickBooks Online, HubSpot, Gmail, Google Sheets, et cetera, so you can connect these things together. So let's look really quickly. If you're trying to okay, this is starting to make sense. I want to automate my WooCommerce store. How do I know what's possible? So let's look at what's possible. So I'm on the Integromat. I have a screenshot of the Integromat website here. The URL is down here at the bottom of the screen. And if you just Google Integromat WooCommerce, you'll find this page. And basically what this page tells you is what's possible with Integromat and WooCommerce. So if you look at those triggers, if you remember that automation we did, that simple automation, the trigger is what kicks off your workflow. Good question from Matt. Similarities and differences between Integromat and Zapier. Zapier was the first app on the scene that connected apps in this way, integrate them and connect them to automate tools. Zapier right now, I started using Zapier when it had about 80 connections. It has over 2,000, I think now. Zapier, when you compare the two, Zapier has far more connections to different apps than Integromat. What Integromat has is a great deal of more power and options. So if we go back, this automation with all of the branching logic and the filters would absolutely never be possible with Zapier in one Zap. And a Zap is what an automation is called in Zapier. This could not have been accomplished with Zapier. It's far too complicated. It's got too much branching logic. There's some filters in here that the more powerful tool is Integromat. The tool that connects with more apps is Zapier. So what I do, I have an account for Zapier and Integromat. And the way I use them is when I have a situation where Integromat won't connect to an app I need, I will connect Integromat to Zapier to accomplish that task. Integromat, I think, has got 400 or 500 connectors versus 2000 with Zapier. So that's the differences and the similarities. Functionally, they both integrate and automate things. Integromat's the more powerful tool. Zapier is the tool with the more connections. And I can tell you, Integromat is about to release a new version of their platform that is going to let people build their own connections. They're going to have a marketplace where you can build connections. So that them lagging behind on the number of connections compared to Zapier, I think that gap's going to close over the next year or so as they make that change. Good question, though. Here's our triggers. Again, it revolves mostly around orders, customers, coupons, and products, whether they are created, updated, or deleted. And that's really, the bulk of what WooCommerce is. Your customers, your products, your coupons, your orders. When something happens with one of those, you can trigger an automation. All right, so as far as actions, and we didn't show any actions in our scenario, but I just wanted to kind of go over the WooCommerce thing to, in thoroughly. There's a whole lot of actions you can do, and it's creating a coupon, creating products in batches, deleting, getting a coupon. Basically you can create, delete, get, update things in your WooCommerce store by using Integromat. There's the rest of the actions at the top. The other thing you can do, so there's triggers, there's actions, and there are searches. So if you had another automation where you wanted to search for a customer and find all the products they've purchased, you could use a search to find that customer and then go look at the products attached to their account, for example. When you're on the Integromat site, they also have templates. This is a really good way to get an idea of what other people are using. You can see this first one here. This 911 means this template's been used 911 times, where people have connected WooCommerce to Google Sheets to save their orders to a Google Sheets spreadsheet. You can add WooCommerce customers to Google Contacts. This is one with Invoice Ninja. Here's one that integrates with QuickBooks. So you can look at these templates and get some ideas about how people are using these automated tools with each other. And you can grab one of these templates, you can use it, or you can start from scratch. So you may be saying, okay, I'm seeing the power in this. How do I get started integrating with WooCommerce? This is kind of the steps I would recommend you take. First of all, document your workflow and processes. Look at what it is that you do and figure out what the steps are you take. And this doesn't have to be complicated. You might have it in your head, but having it on paper will help you as you go to automate this. And then from documented, I would say templatize your process. Create checklists and scripts and that kind of thing so that you have, every step it's going to take. Got a question. Does it let you work with spreadsheet-like interface, or is it a field-to-field sort of interface? Maybe it depends on what you're going to do. Looks like you're getting to this now. Okay. So the way this works is it's moving data from one piece to the other. So you would map that information. So for example, let's say, let me back up here. Let's say we're using this template right here, WooCommerce to Google Sheets. So when a new order comes in from WooCommerce, you're going to have all the data listed that came in from that order. So the person's name, their billing address, it's going to tell you if it was a Stripe, paid with Stripe or PayPal, or it's going to have the name of the product. What you would do is you'd go create a Google Sheet with whatever columns you wanted in it. So name, email, product name, billing address, phone number. And what's going to happen in Integromat is you're going to map those fields. So in your Google Sheets module, you're going to say, in the name column, I want to put name from WooCommerce. In the address column, I want to put the address that came from WooCommerce, and you're just going to transfer that data across. And it's not in a spreadsheet kind of format. I don't know how to describe it. It's in a drag and drop format. I'll say that. And so if we have time, I can actually go show that to you in a little bit. So document your workflow, templatize your process, research the options on Integromat. Like I showed you, go to Integromat, see what it does. Say, in my process, what pieces can I replace with something else, with an automation? And then, okay, good. We're here as long as we want to. And then give it a try. So, give it a try and say, hey, I'm going to try this, and ask for help if needed. If you're not inclined to give it a try, just ask for help. Like I said, there are partners to help. And then the other thing is, and Travis is in this group, you can join the Integromat community on Facebook. Travis and I are both in here, and that's a community where you can go and you can say, hey, this happens all the time. Hey, I'm an Integromat noob, and I tried this and it didn't work. What do I do? And people are really supportive in that group, and they'll help it. And you put a screenshot in there of what you tried, and people will get in there and help you sort out your problems, tell you what to try, teach you the platform. Integromat has great support, so you don't have to go to the Facebook community to get help. You can actually there's the link right there. You can just submit a ticket and say, I need help, and their support is amazing. And their support will hold your hand and help you figure out how to get through the issue you're trying to get through. So that'd be what I'd recommend for doing next, is how to get started. Okay, so questions. I'm going to pull up Integromat while we're seeing if there's any questions. Just trying to find an automation here that will make sense to look at. When automation takes place over a complex series of steps like you've shown, can every step be logged as an audit for debugging? Yes. So Integromat will log those steps. Yeah, here's a good one. Let me show you this one. I'm going to show you that. I'm going to show you this, and then I'm going to come back and answer that question as well. I'm going to show you the logging in it. So this is a simple scenario. This is a type form. This was an idea I had. I haven't done it yet, but I was going to do an Ask Andy Integromat questions with the Integromat Facebook community. So I created a type form. Right here is, I created the type form, and I connect with a webhook to my type form. So that is my trigger. So whenever that type form is submitted, this automation will run. I created a Google Sheet to capture I got stuff going on all over the place here. To capture those items. So here's my connection. So I'm going to connect to, you have to connect to your Google account, obviously, to do this. And here's the spreadsheet. And here's sheet 1. So there's you can imagine a Google Sheet. This is the name of the spreadsheet. The sheet 1 is called sheet 1. It says, does the table contain headers? And I say yes. So right here is the type form ID. So the way I did this, here, as you can see, when I hover over these fields, you can see the type form kind of beats like a heart. That's saying these fields are coming from that step. So I wanted to put the form ID here. Here's the first name. So I go down here to my answers. I'm just going to I'm going to delete these fields out of here and just remap this. All right, so I have a column called Typeform ID. Column B is first name. So I'm going to go over here and say, please tell me your first name. That's the question I asked on Typeform. So I'm going to, I can either click it or I can actually drag it right in that spot. Got an extra space in there. We'll get rid of that. Whoops. Tell us your first name. Not sure why that's, there we go. Email. And please submit your email address. I'll click that in here. And so you just go through and just click in the fields you want. The other thing you can do is this doesn't have to be mapped. You can hard code values. So this is the question column. So you can actually type what you want in there. If there's a constant and not a variable, you can type it in there as well. Move this back over here. So it's just drag and drop where you just click it in here. And I'm not sure what was supposed to go in here. And there's a status. I don't know. So when you're done, you hit OK. And then the next step is I was going to send an email that basically says, hey, thanks for, emailing me your question. So here's let me show you this here. So this is where you add a recipient. So here, this is the field where the email address was, and I could add another one. I could copy myself there if I wanted to. Here's my subject line. I don't have a variable in there. This is going to be static for each one. And then I've got some code in here. Hi, this field is the first name. Thanks for submitting your question to the Ask Andy live event. Here's the information. Here's the event ID. Thank you and have a great day. So this email would go out to them as soon as they say submit this type form. It saves the data to a Google Sheet, and then the email would be sent. And that's probably going to take under 10 seconds. So that's how these work. Let's see. Let's go back to let me save that. Go back here to the history. Back on the logging. This one doesn't have enough history to do that. So what happens is I'm gonna go submit this form. And I'll show you exactly how this works. Just got to log into Typeform and get to that. Oh, it's not the Typeform it was. Let's see. Let me see if I can find another scenario here to show you some logs on. Let's see here. No data in there. Well, I am coming up empty on finding something. Let's see here. Well, what would happen is, let's see if I can find something that shows. Here we go. This one should have some data. Yeah, here we go. All right, so this uses the TV Maze API, which is like the TV Guide API you can use. And so I get, this runs at 4 o'clock every day. And I actually remind myself of television shows that are going to be on. And let's look at this one here. Here we go. All right. So here's the data. So this is looking for a SEAL team. May, I'm not sure what day this was. Yeah, so I have stored in here SEAL Team and SWAT are Wednesday shows. So this probably ran on a Wednesday, the 6th. Yeah, this was a Wednesday. So it looks for shows on the day of the week it is, and then runs to see if it can find those. So this is doing a search and says go look for SEAL Team or SWAT to see if there's any new shows. Here is the API that I hit. This is actually a direct API call, and it comes back with information. This formats, and that time is actually formatted wrong. But here's what happened. I got a Slack message at 4 o'clock on a Wednesday. A new episode of SEAL Team is on CBS at 21:05 p.m. Again, that time is wrong. But that was my notification to say, hey, SEAL Team's on tonight. And so we're going to watch it. And so that is an example of logged data from this scenario run. Question, what can a trigger come from? Any application, external call, creation of new product, and then putting into the website maybe? Yes, so let's go look at the WooCommerce. Travis, could you put that question back up for me, please? So the trigger can come from, any application. So it can, it could come from something totally different. It could even come from a webhook. So you could actually just go to a URL that Integromat provides, and it would run that automation if you wanted to do that. So that would be kind of the external call. A new product. So if you watched products, so this is a trigger for when a new product is created. Excuse me. So say if you're managing the store with somebody else and they're in charge of creating products and you're in charge of doing something else with them, whenever they would create the product, it would trigger an automation or to trigger a scenario to run.
What about creating products on a third-party website and then adding them automatically to your WooCommerce shop? Can that be done?
Yes. So I saw a person in the Facebook community. They have a kind of a mirrored WooCommerce Shopify store. So they have two stores, and what they're doing is whenever they sell a product on one store, they update the inventory by -1 on the other store. So if you buy something on their WooCommerce store, the Shopify inventory goes down by 1. So they're keeping them in sync. So the same could be true is say, hey, if you have both stores, we're going to create a new product on Shopify. We can watch Shopify and then go over here to the WooCommerce store and create the same product over here, vice versa. So yeah, that's totally possible. I don't know why you would have, I haven't figured out why you'd have two stores, an extra headache instead of one, but
All right. Do we have any other questions? Keep the questions coming in. And I was going to say, something like if you have, an Amazon store or something like that as well, you can keep that. If you do a fulfillment by Amazon, just add the product on Amazon, then add it to WooCommerce potentially.
right.
So all different ways. I imagine there are cases where you may want, two stores that are exactly the same, but maybe a different domain name,
Right.
Here's a good question.
Google Marketplace to WooCommerce. That's a great question. This is Integromat.
I do know that WooCommerce and Google Marketplace are getting more and more synced. I'll actually find a link and drop it here.
So I'm not seeing. Let's see. Go do it this way. Integromat. Oops. Apps and services. If you type Google, you'll get all the products. And I don't know about Google Marketplace. Haven't had that question. Google Shopping. I don't know, and that might be a thing where you use Zapier. That's the G Suite Marketplace. I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know offhand.
It looks like it's just got a follow up there.
Preparing for the show, I want to have an inventory to go to Square for sales on a site via iPhone. That sale automatically updates back to the website. When I have an inventory, go to Square for sales.
So integrating the Square systems inventory, shop inventory to WooCommerce, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Let's see. Payment for submission, watch payments, watch transactions, watch orders, returns, create or updated orders since the last check. So if you it looks like, if this is the right app, this is Square. If you watch your orders, probably what you have to do is watch the orders, filter it by that item, and then you can send that to WooCommerce. I haven't used Square that way, but it looks like that might work.
Looks like Adam wants to bounce back to the debugging and the scenario run history there.
Okay, what happens when an automation task fails, especially when a third-party tool or service might be unavailable in order to complete overall? So there's a few things that can happen. You can set up your scenario, your Integromat scenario, to save incomplete executions right there. I typically don't turn those on, but and it also depends on what it is. So, for example, it might fail and stop, and you can actually turn things on in Integromat that says for example, MailChimp has some rules around if they've identified, let's say Travis has got a spammy email and he's always signing up for MailChimp accounts. They might identify that email as a as a spammy email. So even though you've done nothing wrong, if you try to add it to your list, they might say no. So what I typically do for MailChimp is I will just say, if you run into an error, ignore it, because generally MailChimp's going to work unless they have one of the rules, and I've seen this enough that I just say ignore errors from MailChimp. So you can purposely say ignore it and go on, forget it. But if you have an error, let's say MailChimp is down, what'll happen is you can turn emails on from your Integromat account that will say, hey, we've had a problem with the scenario. We're going to try it again in a little bit. Or they may say, we've had 3 issues in a row. We've shut it off. You might want to go take a look at it. They're really good about letting you know. Depending on the service you're using for a trigger, sometimes especially a webhook, if a webhook fires and fails, it's not going to store it and go back and try it again. If a WooCommerce order comes in and maybe QuickBooks Online is down, the API didn't connect, what it'll do is it'll try that one again. So it kind of depends on the tool you're using, but Integromat's really good about letting you know, and there are some things you can do where you can store those incomplete runs. I typically don't do that unless it's like super, super critical, because generally Integromat will try to do it again if something fails. And even I take it back about webhooks. If the webhook fails, they will attempt it again in most circumstances. So it kind of you kind of have to learn the ins and outs of what that is. But Integromat will try to complete your scenarios.
All right. Unless we have any other questions, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Say thank you to Andy. But before we go, Andy, you mentioned that you are putting together a live Ask Andy any Integromat questions event.
Right.
Do you have the details of that yet? Or
I don't have the details. I picked a date and it's gone past. It was in April. I chickened out a little bit. So
okay. Make sure you let us know when you have that information, and we'll share that on all our social media. And I will try to remember to come back to this video on YouTube and drop a link down there for you.
Okay.
So thank you very much, Andy. For all of those of you who are interested, Andy will likely be speaking at the next WordCamp Kansas City as well. Probably something awesome about automation, but he's got all kinds of things up his sleeve, so who knows? So again, thank you very much, Andy. Thank you to everybody who spent your Tuesday evening with us, and hopefully we'll see you in person within the next few months at least, right?
Yeah, hopefully.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys.